In this video, we'll be showing you a really simple example that captures travel expenses. The end result will be a summary of the unique types of categories of expense and the total amount being claimed against each category. In order to do that, we'll create an expenses model where we'll load a CSV file with some expense data. We'll calculate the cost of each expense and we'll compare it against the maximum allowed claim against each type of expense. We'll also add a variable where we can change the tax rate and see the result on that tax rate. And then we'll also have a brief walk through some of the audit history and review functionality in the software as well. To get started, your model is going to need some data, and the easiest way to do that is to upload a CSV file from your desktop. So we're going to click on this icon here, and then we're going to hit Choose File, find the file that we want to upload, hit Choose, and click Use Data Source. Once I've selected my data source, I can see my data in my grid, and in this case I can see that it's a collection of my travel expenses. So I have various descriptions, a category, the quantity of each expense, and the total unit cost of each expense. So the first thing I want to do is multiply the quantity by the unit cost in order to get the total cost. So I'll go over to the right, hit Add a Column, rename it to total cost, and in there I'm going to put a formula as follows. So return the quantity multiplied by the unit cost, and then hit apply. So that'll recalculate and I can see the values now in the total cost column. Before I go any further, what I'll do is I'll go to Workspace, hit Save Workspace, and call this My Expenses. And I'll also rename my model to, in this case, simply Expenses. Okay, the next thing I want to do is add a second model to my workspace. Rename that to Maximum Claim or Max Claim. And in there, I'm going to load in a new file, in this case, that contains the maximum allowed claim against each category of expense. So we can see the 4 categories and then the total maximum claim against each. And then I'm going to go back to my expenses model and I'm going to add a new formula that looks up the maximum claim against each one of these rows. So what I'll do is go to Columns, add a new column, rename it to Maximum Claim Allowed, and in here I'm going to start with return, and as I start to type in the word lookup, the IntelliSense will start to give me some options in terms of what functions I can use, and then what I want is the first option, and then it also then gives me some hints in terms of the values I need to provide. So the model that I'm looking the value up from is called Max Claim. The column that I'm searching in that Max Claim model, and if I'm not too sure on the name, I can actually go to the left hand side here, go to Other Models, expand out Max Claim and pick Category. The value that I'm searching for is this value here, so I can just type in Category as well. The value that I want to return is in the column called Max Claim, and then the value I want to return in the case of an error, in this case, is simply a 0. So if it can't find the category, for example, the row will just return a 0. So once I'm happy with all that, I'm going to hit the apply button, and that's added the formula, and I can see that the maximum claim is now sitting there against each row. So now that we know the maximum claim allowed, we can compare the total cost against that maximum claim and decide for each row whether we're actually returning the maximum amount or the total amount that the person's claimed. So I'm going to add a new column. I'm going to call that Allowed Claim. And in this case, I'm going to use a code snippet for an if-else statement. And the check that we're going to do is if the total cost is greater than or equal to the maximum claim allowed, we're simply going to return the maximum claim. In every other condition, we'll return the total cost. And there we go. So this last column now contains the actual amount that the person is allowed to claim. Next, we want to see what the total amount claimed against each category in aggregate is. So I'm going to add a new model. I'm going to call that summary. And I'll also move that to the front and just save my workspace. So rather than pulling through or providing a file in this case, I actually want to obtain a unique list of these categories, and I want them to appear in my summary model, and then I'm going to total this column here against each unique category. So I'll go to the summary model and I'll actually add a column, even though I've got no data, and I'll call that category, and I'll use a function called setDataSource. And I'm not totally sure how this setDataSource function works, so I'll go to the help option up here on the top right hand corner, and I'll type in setDataSource and do a search. So what this actually does is it searches our wiki site and our various help articles. I can see there's an article there called setDataSource, and if I click on that, there's some information explaining how it works, and there's some example code. And I can copy that example code into my function here. Close that, and then I can simply replace the sample values. So instead of model 1, the model that we're using is called expenses, and the column that we're returning is called category. So what this is doing is it's pulling through a distinct value of the category column from our expenses model, and it's using that as the data source. And just before I hit apply, I'm going to change the format of this column from a number to text, and then I'm going to hit apply. So our summary model now contains a unique list of the categories in our expenses. The next thing we want to do is add a column that calculates the total amount being claimed against each unique expense category. So we're going to add a new column. We'll call that total claimed. And we'll start with return, and the function we're going to use is a SUMIF function. The model that we're looking in is the expenses model. The column we're searching in is our category column in our expenses model. The value we're looking for is our new category column here in our summary model, and the value that we're summing is the allowed claim column in our expenses model. And then once we've done that, we'll hit apply. And there we go. So that's now returned the total amount, or the total allowed claim for each unique category. Next, we want to use variables so that we can apply tax to our expenses. So I'll go to the expenses model. And what we want to do is have a tax rate that we can apply that modifies this total cost value here. So to get started, I'll click on this little variables icon, and I'll create a new variable called tax. And we'll put in a value of 0.1 or 10%. Then I can go to the total cost column, click on the little icon here, and I can modify that formula to, in this case, multiply by 1 minus the tax value. So in this case, it'll subtract 10% from our total cost, and I'll hit apply. And we can see that all those values have changed, and that should then flow through the rest of the model all the way through to our summary. So now that the tax is a variable, we can go in and we could change that to 20%, for example, and that'll automatically flow through to the total cost column as well as any other dependent columns. When it comes to reviewing a model, some of the common things you'll need to do is look at things like the dependent and precedent columns for a particular formula. Another example would be to view the audit history to the model itself or to a particular column. So has a particular formula changed, for example? So to view any precedent columns, what you can do is click on a column, so for example the allowed claim, and select show precedents. What that will do is it will actually filter the model to only the precedent columns. So what we're saying here is that for allowed claim, these are the two columns that are used in that formula. If we want to then go back to seeing the full model, we can go to the top right here where it says filtering is on, click close, and that'll refresh the screen. If I want to see the history of a particular column, I can click on the column, go to history, and I can pick the versions that I want to compare. So let's say I want to compare the first version with the third version. So we can see that it's gone from being quantity times unit cost to being quantity times unit cost times 1 minus tax. You can also do the same at the workspace level. So you can go to workspace, again go to history, and we can see the full history of our workspace here. So we can pick, say, version 2 against version 10, and it will go through and it will show you any changes that have taken place. So that could be new models being added, it could be new columns being added, being deleted, etc. Now that my workspace is complete and fully functional, I can start loading new data sets in and see what the calculated results are. So let's say it's a new month and I have a new set of expenses. I can actually go to the data source screen, pick choose file, and in this case I can pick a new travel expenses file and use that as my data source. So my model will recalculate. It's now using the new set of data. Again, I can go to my summary and I can see my new summarized results. So in this video, we looked at the basics around loading data into YuCalc. We also had a look at formulas, including putting formulas within a model, as well as doing lookups and creating some summary type formulas like a SUMIF. We spent a bit of time looking at variables, and we also looked at how we could view the precedence on a particular column. Finally, we spent a bit of time on the audit trails, including the history on either a column or the workspace itself. Thank you very much for watching this video. We hope you found it useful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch.